The year is 1946. World War II had just come to a close a year prior, and a not-so-little soda company called Coca-Cola was going through a pretty significant growth. Capitalizing on the post-war economic boom, the sweet elixir of the gods known as Coke had stomped its foot down as the drink of choice for the average consumer. The Coca-Cola company was a behemoth even back then, with its flagship product being one of the most recognizable on the market. The drink's distinctive logo, red and white color scheme, and memorable advertising campaigns contributed to its widespread popularity and consumer appeal. And not just within the States. By this point in time, Coke had been going global. It had made its mark all over the world, including the Soviet Union. Shortly after the war, a man by the name of Georgy Zhukov was introduced to the sweet nectar we know as Coke, and like the rest of the world, he was hooked. But unlike the rest of the world, Zhukov just so happened to be the Marshal of the Soviet Union, and the man who introduced him to said sweet nectar was that of Dwight D. Eisenhower, also known as the soon-to-be 34th President of the United States. Like the rest of the world, Zhukov loved the stuff, but he had a problem. You see, as the Cold War was brewing and America's influence was beginning to spread all over the rest of the world, Zhukov was afraid that if he was seen drinking a bottle of the good stuff, then this might be associated with American imperialism. I mean, it makes sense. Nothing screamed American capitalism like the vibrant red logo of the Coca-Cola company, which was slapped over every bus stop in America. To avoid any political confusion, Zhukov refused to drink Coke in public out of fear of being photographed with the American beverage. But like the rest of the world, he was hooked on the stuff, so he started asking for a solution. And well, ask and thou shalt receive. In a diplomatic gesture of goodwill, the at the time president of the US, Harry S. Truman, got in contact with Coca-Cola's chairman of the board, James Farley, and began to devise what the company called White Coke. No wait, sorry, not that kind of White Coke. But instead, White Coke was a variant of Coca-Cola, this time without the usual red and white logo, and instead of the rich brown color of the drink, White Coke boasted a completely clear soda. White Coke maintained the same flavor as normal Coke, however the manufacturers took out the caramel coloring of the drink. As for the bottle, White Coke had a simple clear bottle with a white cap and a red star in the middle. The idea was that Zhukov could still consume Coke, the drink that was so related to American imperialism, all while the rest of Russia assumed he was just drinking vodka. And so, with 1946's White Coke, clear cola was born, but we'd have to wait a few more decades before we saw it again, when a rivaling cola company that had more of a blue hue started to become a little more clear. The 90s was all about fads and trends. You got stuff like soap shoes, beanie babies, yo-yos, Macaulay Culkin. But one thing that seemed to transcend for all the consumer markets was a little thing called the clear craze. Everything was clear.
Let me be clear.
Game Boys went clear. The iMac G3 was clear. Sony released a clear Walkman. Every piece of technology back then seemed to have some form of transparent variant. With the major technological advancements the decade had, the 90s thought nothing was cooler than futuristic tech. Oh, and also backflips. Which, I mean, come on, backflips are still kinda sick. The clear craze made it so that consumers could see all the working parts of the new high-tech gadget they just spent an ungodly amount of money on. These see-through shell cases made the technology feel more futuristic and aligned with the 90s cyberpunk futurism aesthetic. But as well as allowing the consumer to admire the inner workings of this newfound tech, the clear craze may have also been born out of fear of the future. Allowing the consumer to see exactly what was going on inside the products they were purchasing gave them the feeling of power, at a time when new technology was a scary concept that may have led to humans becoming, batteries or Skynet blowing everyone up.
Stop it!
Maybe that sounds a little bit dumb. And I mean, it is. For the most part, the transparent trend was more of a stylistic choice, not something derived from fear of our AI overlords. But the clear craze wasn't just about seeing the inner workings of a Game Boy. You see, as well as the rise of new and scary technology, the average consumer was also being exposed to new and scary consumable products. Fast food companies like McDonald's were introducing newer and more addictive menu items, and the increase and normalization of processed foods on store shelves led to somewhat of an obesity crisis around the world. Similar to my theory about wanting to see inside our own technology out of fear of it, the 90s public began wanting to take a peek inside what they were consuming. It sounds pretty stupid, I'm not gonna lie, but at the time, the idea of being able to see through a product meant that companies couldn't hide any unhealthy or harmful chemicals inside. I know, it's so dumb. But that was how companies viewed the situation, and so the clear craze infiltrated the rest of the store shelves. It was here when we got such products as Ivory Clear, a new take on the soap brand that sold completely see-through soap. As well as this, we got stuff like Clear Vanilla Jello Pudding Pops, which I can't actually find a picture of, so maybe they exist. And of course, what we're all here for, a little drink known as Crystal Pepsi.
Yes, we've got Crystal Pepsi.
Yes, we do. No, we don't have Crystal Pepsi. This is Domino.
Let's rewind a little bit to the 80s, a decade which saw a neck-and-neck race between the two biggest cola companies. Coke and Pepsi desperately tried to one-up each other, with Pepsi playing dirty, releasing campaigns like the Take the Pepsi Challenge commercial, which had members of the public saying how they preferred the taste of Pepsi.
I like Pepsi a lot better.
Pepsi tastes better.
Coke would then respond to this with their own mascot, Max Headroom, saying that it was Coke that the public preferred in a blind taste test. It was a debate as old as time, Coke or Pepsi. It's the same as debates like Xbox versus PlayStation or Fortnite versus crack cocaine. Sorry, that was stupid. This decade saw the two companies trying anything to get ahead of one another. Pepsi Cola dropped the variant Pepsi Free in 1982, quickly followed by Coke releasing Diet Coke just a few months later. Pepsi then changed the name of Pepsi Free to Diet Pepsi to try to catch up. Then Coke dropped New Coke, which was a whole new cola formula. Now this was a difficult back and forth, with a lot of people, especially the youth, seeing Pepsi as a newer and cooler drink than Coke. But despite both efforts of the companies, soda sales were beginning to dwindle by the turn of the decade. By 1991, sales of fizzy beverages began to slow down to a growth rate of 1.8%. And because of this, mixed with the ongoing trend of clear products, Pepsi began brewing. Behind closed doors of the Pepsi Cola company, a man by the name of David C. Novak saw that Pepsi had to pull back the market. Sure, they were still a huge company, but they needed something new and exciting. Seeing the health trends in the zeitgeist at the time, as well as the rise of clear products, Novak decided that Pepsi had to hop on the transparent train as well. As far as the clear trend in the beverage business, the early 90s saw a rise in bottled water sales and drinks like Canadian Clear. And after seeing this, Novak got to work creating what we know today as Crystal Pepsi.
The goal of Crystal Pepsi is crystal clear.
In the 1992 Super Bowl, the company dropped their first commercial for Crystal Pepsi, which was a pretty weird and out there film, but it seemed to work. The nation was intrigued. What was this new step into the future of soda? The future of consumerism even? Our beloved Pepsi, but now see-through? It seemed too good to be true.
Let me be perfectly clear.
And it was. You see, when a person hears the term Crystal Pepsi, it makes sense for them to assume the drink was a clear variant of Pepsi, a purely cosmetic change, as if closing your eyes and drinking one would be indistinguishable from a normal Pepsi drink. But it wasn't. To make Crystal Pepsi clear, the Pepsi Cola company had to take out the caramel coloring from the drink. Now don't let the name fool you though. The caramel coloring of Pepsi was more than just for the color. It was a truly vital part of the classic cola taste. To get around this, Pepsi decided to use a colorless food starch instead, and after creating over 3,000 test formulas for the drink, they settled on the final Crystal Pepsi flavor. But there was a problem. It just wasn't Pepsi. At least, not exactly. The classic Pepsi flavor just wasn't there. It was a little bit off, and Pepsi knew this. So to get around this issue, they attempted to sell the drink as a whole new flavor, as well as the transparency, having slogans like "Cola has a whole new flavor" in their ads. But the average consumer saw right through this and honed in on the fact that Pepsi was now clear. And can you blame them? It doesn't exactly scream new flavor. But despite this oversight from the consumer, Crystal Pepsi was a hit. Flying off the shelves left and right, everyone was enticed by this taste of the future. Everyone wanted to know what it was like to drink a crystal clear Pepsi. And so, Pepsi seemingly had a winning ticket. The company was cool again, and this clear drink was just what the 90s needed. Their future-obsessed minds on the brink of a technological renaissance, the consumer could now feel like they were in a futuristic society, and they could taste it too. But it tasted off. Like I said before, changing the chemical properties of the drink and taking out the caramel coloring made Crystal Pepsi taste different from its translucent bigger brother. While the release of the Crystal Soda was met with an influx of sales, for most people the drink was just a gimmick, something to try once and never again. The golden ticket Pepsi thought they had turned out to be nothing more than a fad.
I got it!
Where?
Let's see! Fooled you, didn't I? You thought I really had it.
Not only did the different taste put off some buyers, but also the fact that the clear look of the soda didn't actually make it healthier at all. With a big part of the clear craze being the health benefits of clear products, Pepsi just simply didn't add coloring. Which honestly is kind of weird considering how people viewed Diet Cola at the time, which we'll talk about later. So yeah, I don't really know. But yeah, sure, sales began to dwindle a little bit, but the drink still held the spot for the most popular beverage of the early 90s. Despite some seeing it as a gimmick, the drink was still flying off shelves. Apart from some hiccups, all seemed to be going well for Pepsi. All up until a rival cola company that you might have heard of began to hatch a plan.
Nobody ever goes in. Nobody ever comes out.
As Crystal Pepsi became the drink of the future and the hot new soda of the new decade, the bigwigs over at the Coca-Cola company knew they needed to respond. The idea of a Coca-Cola Clear or a Crystal Coke like they had made for Zukov all those years before surely floated around the boardroom, but no. Instead, they devised a much more sinister plan of action. An assassination.
Long live the king
of Crystal Pepsi. As well as the obvious Coke and Diet Coke, the Coca-Cola company also owned other soda brands such as Fanta and Sprite, and one that I admittedly hadn't heard of until making this video by the name of Tab Cola. Now, Tab Cola became as obsolete as the Laserdisc when Diet Coke dropped in 1982. You see, Tab was a cola that was specifically for the diet soda market, priding itself in being a sugar-free alternative to the usual tea-frothing beverages. But unlike today's soda market, back then the consumer had a negative association with diet sodas. To add more to the list of dumb shit made up by the patriarchy, the concept of a diet soda was seen as feminine, and therefore wasn't widely accepted by the masses. Because as we all know, wanting to be healthy is for girls, and they are smelly and gross. Coca-Cola mainly targeted middle-aged women with Tab Cola. It wasn't exactly the cool kids' drink, and Coke knew that.
Life's not fair, is it?
The winter of 1992 rolled around, and Crystal Pepsi had been holding its own on the shelves for a solid 8 months. Things seemed fine, but the winds blew harsh that fateful season. And on the 14th of December, the Coca-Cola company released Tab Clear to the world. A zero-sugar, caffeine-free crystal soda. A drink designed to fail. A drink planned to fail. And a drink that would take Crystal Pepsi down with it.
An ambush.
In the book Killing Giants, 10 Strategies to Topple the Goliath in Your Industry, author Stephen Denny interviewed Sergio Zeman, the at the time chief marketing officer of Coca-Cola. He said that Tab Cola was already a lesser brand in the consumer's eye. People didn't want diet sodas yet, so having Crystal Pepsi be closely associated with Tab Clear rather than a clear brand Coca-Cola product meant that the consumer would begin to think less of Pepsi's golden goose. Like I said before, people didn't want diet drinks out of fear of being emasculated or something dumb like that. So Tab Clear having the words sugar-free in big letters slapped on the can, which sat on the shelf right next to Crystal Pepsi bottles, meant that a potential buyer would see Crystal Pepsi as a diet product and therefore an inferior product. This evil little plan by Coke was what was known as a kamikaze strategy. They released Tab Clear knowing that it would fail, but having people associate it with Crystal Pepsi would mean the end for the transparent king. And well,
they bought it.
By March of 1993, just 4 months after the release of Tab Clear, both itself and Crystal Pepsi were taken off store shelves for good. Coke got what they wanted, so clear soda fell dormant, with only a few pitiful attempts being made like 1995's 7-Up Cola Clear, but still no dice. It seemed that was the end. The people were just not ready for the future of soda. Then, from the ashes, one man changed everything. Enter Kevin Thomas Strahel, I think that's his last name. Also known as the LA Beast in the food world, and Skippy62able over here on YouTube. On the 13th of February 2013, Kevin would release to the world a video entitled, "Enjoying a 20-year-old Crystal Pepsi. Warning, vomit alert." Currently sitting at 20 million views, the now age-restricted video depicted Kevin chugging a 1992 bottle of Crystal Pepsi. The drink had become yellow with age,
and as you can clearly see, it's yellow.
And after chugging the thing, Kevin would subsequently projectile vomit all over his table. The video of course went viral, and it was what he said just before he downed the bottle that would change everything.
Cheers. If somebody from Pepsi's listening, let's bring back the Crystal Pepsi.
This got people interested, and so it began. Viewers from around the world peered through their nostalgia goggles and began the Bring Back Crystal Pepsi movement. For a brief period between 2013 and 2015, people went crazy trying to bring back the clear soda time had seemingly forgot. The movement, led by the LA Beast himself, managed to garner over 37,000 Change.org signatures, thousands of social media posts, and even 20 different billboards with the words Bring Back Crystal Pepsi along with Kevin's face plastered on them. This shit got a little out of hand. Kevin started driving around a Bring Back Crystal Pepsi van. There was a Crystal Pepsi song made. It was a lot, and amazingly, it seemed to have worked. On June 8th, 2015, just over 2 years after Kevin's original video, Pepsi sent him this letter, and I include this because I think it's funny they referred to him as Mr. Beast. The letter thanked Kevin for being such a big fan of Crystal Pepsi. They applauded his efforts and humor and said to keep a lookout for what they have in store. And so, the world waited. Then, on December 9th, 2015, Kevin would upload a video titled Crystal Pepsi is back, baby! The video in question shows Kevin excitedly waiting for a Pepsi representative to arrive at his door and hand deliver him the first box of modern day Crystal Pepsi. I'll link this video and recommend going watching it after this one because it's just such a happy vibe. Kevin is so excited in this video, he even kisses the guy's shoe at one point.
I mean, that's a little weird, but yeah, sure, whatever.
And because of this one man's perseverance and love of Pepsi, he did it. It really goes to show what you can do if you put your mind to it. After this video, Pepsi made a sweepstakes, giving out the new Crystal Pepsi sodas to lucky winners, and eventually they began selling them to everyone. And for a brief time between 2015 and 2016, Crystal Pepsi was back on shelves in stores across US and Canada. The drink would make its return 2 more times for very short periods in both 2018 and 2022. But as of today, Crystal Pepsi is no longer available. And that, my friends, concludes our story. As far as clear colas go, Coca-Cola did in fact revive the white cola that they made all those years ago, this time being branded as Coke Clear and released in Japan in 2018. And believe it or not, it's still available to this day. Now I know what you're thinking. How am I gonna sit here and make a whole ass video on a drink that I've never even tasted? Surely I should try a Crystal Pepsi. But after seeing Kevin's original video, I'm a little reluctant. Then again, that was a 20-year-old bottle.
I'm gonna drink it anyway.
These days I can probably find one that's only a couple of years old. I'm sure it's gonna be okay, right? I don't know. So, if you wanna see me drink a cool Crystal Pepsi, then please consider donating to this GoFundMe. Because God knows I'm a student and I can't afford to drop £50 on a bottle of Pepsi. I know it's dumb. I'd recommend not donating, but if you wanna see it, then you know what to do. But for now, to end this little video of mine, I'll give you the next best thing. I'm gonna chug this Pepsi with a blindfold on and imagine that it's crystal clear.
Oh my. Woo! Get ready for the burp. Subscribe.